Yes, I know that I'm feeling very smug. The smuggest person in the world, even smugger than Smug Baz. Smug Baz being the alter ego of negative Baz, of course. But in my smugness, I have some words for Eric. I do not feel sorry for him, but Eric, just remember, in times of defeat, it's important to pick yourself up off the ground. Until you get thrashed, you can never be found. And we'll chat a little bit more about that thrashing here on Talk of the Trinity.
Hola, amigas and amigos, and welcome to the Talk of the Trinity podcast. I am Senor Barrett. With me, as always, is Senor Trinity Will Forrest. You'll be pleased to know that is the end of the Spanish lesson. You'll also be pleased to know that if you go on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, you will be able to keep up to date with all the latest Villa news, reviews, previews, team news, club votes, polls, anything else that is going on in the world of Villa. And if you want to catch up on past episodes, give yourself a visual treat by going onto our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity. Or if you like the audio tones, if you're waiting for the one train a day that's currently running, even though the train strike is meant to be over. Or, if you want some relaxing time, you're in the bath or, just got the lights off and the curtains drawn because it's been that type of week, you can go on to our audio providers, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google. We're also on FanHub, some other places. You can find us basically, and we really do appreciate you taking the time to subscribe, listen, watch, retweet, comment. And there's certainly been plenty to like over the last couple of days with Villa, because events on Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m, Villa Park. The most important thing wasn't the result. You'll see if you're watching our audio. You will see if you're watching our visual, but you won't if you're listening to the audio, that my co-host is getting ready to do the victory speech, thanking everybody for his wonderful insights that he had. If you listen to our preview episode, and if you haven't, go back and listen to that just so you can confirm what I'm about to say is true. Because credit is due, Mr. Forrest did predict the result on Sunday with literally no precedence of this happening in the previous 27 years. But he went there anyway. He lived up to the name of Positive Will and then some. But if you believe, sometimes it will happen. And it did. Aston Villa 3, Manchester United 1. So, guessing you didn't really enjoy the game much, Will, because it just pretty much happened exactly how you said. Must have been a bit boring for you.
Mate, you can feel the radiation of smugness, can't you?
Yeah, about this is what they're talking about a COP27. I mean, this is the primary threat to our kind of global warming.
Yeah, mate, I tell you, it was interesting, wasn't it, to see that we raced into that 2-goal lead, and then we went out and did exactly what I said we'd do, which is no surprise from you we would. I have to get one right in every 40, don't I? And why not make the big calls?
Let's say 1-1.
Yeah, I don't need to predict the right result when we play Watford or Brentford or those shit teams. I'm going to let you know when to watch Match of the Day.
Yeah, big time, Will. That's what I'll have to start calling you.
Mate, I'm telling you, it's a pretty decent game, though, weren't it? I was chatting to Randeep from the Punjabi Villains yesterday. We got chatting a little bit because the Punjabi Villains are going to come on onto an episode at one point, and he said, you must have loved doing the podcast following the game. I went, we haven't done it yet, mate. I'm still going to be really fucking smug.
I'm going to love it. I'm going to love every single minute of it. I think the great things about it were before the game even started, I enjoyed it because I heard about your escapades on the train,
Yep.
which were just as hopefully everybody's okay, but that just made everything better. Yeah, quality,
Yep.
quality.
They escaped. I got to the game on time. I wouldn't be as happy about it if the delay would have been any longer, having missed, because I would have missed the first 10 minutes. But because I got to see all of it, I can laugh about it now. But in terms of to enlighten the listeners, I was on a train to the game, and the emergency cord was pulled because a lad got himself stuck in the toilet, and the driver had to come and use the emergency override of the toilet because it's an electronic door system that had broken, so had to use the emergency override to get this lad out of his predicament. But it was a very swift operation, to be fair. I mean, it was swifter than what was going on inside the toilet. Getting him out was pretty swift in comparison. So I didn't really have too much of a delay. So I would say I was in my seat for kickoff, but I was one down from my seat because I did a gentlemanly thing whereby somebody was sat on the other side of me because they'd brought a ticket, but they wanted to sit to their friends who were next to me. So we swapped seats, which was nice of me, I will say. So it was a very positive day all round, really. And it's say in terms of, you mentioned what was going on before the game, but of course, one of the things that happened before the game was the team sheet that was released an hour before the game, Emery's first selection in charge of Villa. It became more apparent to me in the second half because I was sat in the Holte end, so I was able to see the shape of Villa more easily in the second half when they were based in the Holte end attacking the North Stand. But we've talked all season about different formations, Gerrard trying to find his right formation. Is it 4-3-3? Is it going to be a 4-1-3-1-2 or Christmas tree or whatever? Kind of a good old-fashioned 4-4-2 on paper. It's slightly surprising to see how it worked on the team sheet and how it worked in operation, but from a tactical perspective, you have to say it worked an absolute treat.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's talk that he very much turned into a 4-2-2-2 at times, that he was very tactically astute, wasn't he, during the game with the fluidity of where players were playing. I mean, Jacob Ramsey had a masterclass of the game again, getting in and around the pitch. Leon Bailey was here, there, and everywhere as well. I mean, he nearly got in the way of Ramsey for his goal, the first goal, that is. But they worked it so well. Having those wide forwards in Watkins and Bailey worked very well together. And then, there were points at the end where they decided to go and put Dendoncker that little bit further forward to nullify the threat of Ericsson. Do you know what? It feels like we've got a manager who knows what he's doing.
Yep.
What a lovely feeling that is.
I mean, we talked about it in the preview episode in terms of he was a tactical manager, and he certainly showed that early on. And I think it was in terms of he'd set out the Villa team the way to play, but also it became very quickly apparent that the flaws in the way Manchester United were set up and the way they were playing, was able to adapt to ruthlessly exploit those. I mean, in terms of the amount of space that United were leaving us, especially in the first half. I mean, in terms of their fullbacks, where one was bombing forward and we were just comfortably playing it in the space behind them. In terms of, there was a massive, massive gap between kind of their front and back. And yeah, it's one of those situations where we've seen it happen a lot of times before at Villa. You take the lead, an early lead, 2 goals, and there's almost that cliche of taking the lead too early and then you're hanging on for dear life. And with Villa, usually the amount of games that we could both name off the top of our head where either we've drawn 2-2 or lost 3-2 after going 2-0 up. Yeah, I mean, just against United, let alone anybody else.
Yeah.
But I think the way we largely controlled the game, and in terms of if that was the outcome of, 3 or 4 days of training. I mean, there was a period at the end of the first half where United had most of the ball. They didn't really create very much, though. I didn't think. I mean, their goal was lucky in terms of that deflection. I think Ronaldo had one chance, which I thought was, it was good positioning by Martinez, but a save you'd expect him to make. In the second half, United had a couple of chances where they'd pass the ball backwards rather than shoot. But the remarkable thing about it, I thought, was going in at half time thinking, oh, God, we've seen this so many times before. Comfortable. And considering in terms of we hadn't beaten them at home for nearly 30 years, really to sit back for the last 20, 30 minutes, not really feeling in any danger at all. I mean, I think that's the most remarkable bit of Sunday. And, you have to testament to the manager. And as you said, testament to the players for doing what they were told to do and being ruthless. I think that's the thing. It was exploiting a clearly defined plan, what it looked like. And yeah, we took them to the cleaners, as it were.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you think about the chances United had, as you say, they had the 2-1s in the first half, Garancho and Ronaldo, and 2 very good saves by Martinez, especially the one from the Ronaldo header with his foot, where he managed to sort of flick the ball back out then to a Villa player. I think it's Buendia. And in the second half, you just didn't really feel. I mean, United go forward, and I think because we've been in that situation before where we've been a couple of goals up against them, you're always a bit trepidatious and a bit cautious. But they were nothing special. There was one, I remember seeing one bit on Match of the Day because I watched it back on there afterwards just to relive it. I've watched it about 3 times since. And I think it's Diego Dalot who's bombing into the box, or Rashford, and they put a cross in.
Yep.
And it goes behind everybody, and we clear it, and then it leads to the referee getting in the way, I think, eventually.
Yep. That did not go down well in the ground.
No, I remember seeing it live as well. But Man United or the pundits were saying about the chance that Man United had here. They didn't have a chance. They broke it down for themselves. We were never going to concede from that cross. It was that poor. But then you look at us and you think about all the little things that we did differently, and you ask yourself, were they all improvements? And I think they were. I mean, for one, Emery apparently didn't tell the team what the starting 11 was until 2.5 hours before the match. And usually the players would find out the day before under Gerrard. So you think, okay, they were still hungry, and I read somewhere that it said it didn't matter who was starting. Villa knew that they were going to win no matter what team they put out because of how Emery had prepared them for it, one of the players had said. And then you see the Emi Martinez scenario with our free kick, where you see him on the halfway line, positioning Mings and Konsa. It's quite interesting as well, though. A bit of a backstory about free kicks in the Premier League. I don't know if you've seen it. Ben Foster has his own podcast, and Neil Cutler was on it, and he was saying about what a great club Villa is, how he still supports them and whatnot, even though he's been sacked. And apparently there was one game where Gerrard came in and had a right moan at Austin McPhee, saying we've got all these fantastic free kick takers and we keep hitting the wall. What's going on? You need to do better. I'm not happy, basically, was the gist of it, or that's how it came across. And Austin McPhee racked his brain. Neil Cutler and a few of the others felt that it was very uncalled for the way he'd been spoken to. And it turns out that referees weren't counting out 10 yards properly. When they were doing a step, they weren't getting a whole yard into their strides. They were doing 0.8 of a yard. Yep. So ultimately, these balls were 6 to 8 yards away. So these players weren't able to get the ball over them and hit them. But Austin McPhee and the Villa spoke to the league. The league have now made sure they're counting out 10 yards, making it a lot harder for teams to defend free kicks. And, well, Luca Din's beauty was a byproduct of that, because that was a fantastic free kick. Absolutely perfection, really.
I mean, it was a good job it went in because Martinez was almost in the dugout. So if it would have been in terms of if it would have hit the wall and United would have cleared it, they would have had pretty much. I mean, yeah, Martinez probably would have got back across. But yeah, I mean, in terms of those little things that make a difference. I mean, we talked about it when Austin McPhee first came in terms of set piece coaches, in terms of the traditional, you may call it, attitude of, oh, what do you need one of them for? What's the point of that? So those little differences. I mean, personally, I would have said in training they should also practice with the wall 6 to 8 yards away. So they've got it for both. But yeah, those little things make a big difference. And yeah, a great finish from Digne there. And before we go back to the Villa loving, we mentioned Man United briefly, and the fact weren't massively impressed with the way they played. But I wasn't massively impressed with their lineup. And in terms of, I don't really go into too much about playing weakened teams and disrespect and all that, because you have a 25-man squad. You can pick who you like, in my view. I mean, it becomes more an issue at the end of the season, in terms of maybe relegation battles or games that affect European qualification. But there was an eyebrow raised when I saw that United team in terms of Ronaldo up front and debut for, just checking I can attempt to pronounce his name correctly, as I now am an expert in Spanish. Garnacho, Van der Beek playing like his first game of the season, Garnacho's debut, Ronaldo 3 weeks ago storming down the tunnel. I think that there was an element in that United team of thinking, we're not going to need to do very much here to get this done. And you could say, well, 27 years of experience has led them to that conclusion. But in terms of when you're in a situation whereby you got to chase a game, Ronaldo is not going to be that player. He's going to be chasing from the front. I mean, in terms of he's not the player that he used to be. I mean, that's not exactly an outrageous statement based on the fact, he's had a must be 20-year career, near the end of that, numerically. So he's not going to be still a threat, in terms of in the air, I would have thought. But then I saw the coach at full time was moaning about United putting in too many crosses, trying to get it on the floor. Ganuccio did all right. Van der Beek, you can see why he isn't threatening to take Fernandez's place in the United team. But yeah, I think it was a team. I mean, Villa didn't know what their team, you said, until 2.5 hours before the game. I do think when they saw that United team, there would have been an element of, yeah, I think we got a chance here. I mean, we thought we had a chance anyway, as you were saying, in terms of that. But it wasn't the strongest United team. And I think it showed in terms of the way they played. And yeah, ruthless, word I mentioned earlier, in terms of that's not something we're used to very often from a Villa performance, exploiting the weakness in the opposition with kind of clinical precision. And that was exactly what happened. We got the goals early and then we locked the game down largely. And, that's not something we're used to, as I said. And so that was the best bit of it for me.
I think when you look at the Man United team, though, and I can't remember, and I'm sure you'll probably be able to tell me, they played Real Sociedad, didn't they, on the Thursday?
Yep.
And I can't remember if it was 10 changes to the lineup or there were 10 players that started against us as well. Either way, it doesn't matter. We won 3-1. Yep. But I think a lot of that team I'd have expected to have seen. You expect De Gea to be in goal.
Yep.
Luke Shaw is their strongest left back. Martinez, the butcher, who should have been sent off by all accounts. You'd expect him to start at centre back. You'd put Maguire there, though on recent matches you wouldn't, because he just hasn't been favoured. And then you'd expect Dalot to be at right back because he seems to be the preferred choice over Wan-Bissaka. Yep. Casemiro and Eriksen, you'd expect them to be in midfield. Maybe Eriksen a bit higher with Bruno not being in, and then putting in a McTominay or a Fred to sit in alongside Casemiro. Ronaldo, yeah, didn't really expect him. You'd maybe have thought more of a Sancho, Martial and Rashford attack for them. So, I think a lot of it was first teamers, really. but we just did everything that we needed to do, and the finishes. And it's quite funny. It was quite interesting even hearing about Emery and how he was constantly pointing and shouting and talking to the players. He was very animated. And when you see Emery Cam on the Villa channel, and that third goal that we score, when Watkins gets into the position where he's holding the ball up in the penalty box and then plays it back towards the edge of the box for Ramsey, when Watkins starts to shift his body, you just see Emery stop and he starts smiling as if he knew that this was coming and he knew what was coming next. And Jacob Ramsey exploited those spaces brilliantly, didn't he?
Yep.
He knows how to put a ball into the top corner. He did it twice in the match, but that goal and whatnot was fantastic. And then seeing Emery at the end was also, I was a little saddened in some ways with how he just walked off. He clapped everyone and walked off. But at the same time, you think that's the mark of a good manager. He knows that he's done everything that he needed to do to get that victory. And instead of standing there and getting the applause of everyone, he's gone, no, it's the players who have put that extra effort in. They got it over the line. Let them get the applause. I'll carry on down the tunnel because we've got Man United on Thursday now, and I need to think about what my starting lineup's going to be for that game. I think, but Emery seems to have made a connection with the fans already. The fans are obviously buoyed by this, and even ones that were a little bit uncertain about him, though I don't think there were many. We discussed that, that there weren't exactly the street fairs and cartwheels that we'd expect with a manager of his calibre. But I think people are realising that we've got a good one here, and it is a comet that's fallen from the sky. It's not a cream egg, or it's a cream egg the size of the comet that's come from the sky with him. And moving forward, he's hopefully going to be one of the best managers that we've seen for a very, very long time. And he got it spot on tactically. He did everything he needed to get us on side as well, the fans, in the way that, even the littlest things as well. Boubacar Kamara coming back from injury, and he looked good when he came on. And he even...
Someone's up front. Kind of on one occasion, one counter-attack up front.
Well, and there was even the resurrection of Morgan Sanson back from the dead. But apparently, Emery rates Sanson from his time at PSG.
That was one of the biggest cheers of the day when Sanson came on. I think there was a collective 15,000 people in the whole end looking around at each other going, where's this guy been? It's I thought he'd left. So, with Sanson, if he can put the performances in on the training field that can justify him having more of a role in the team, then that is obviously a good thing, in terms of it's all hands on deck, in terms of you don't want to exclude players just for personal reasons. If they can contribute, you want them in. And I'd say in terms of Emery, we talked about it in the preview, a tactical manager with a group of decent players is likely to get a higher level of performance than just a motivational manager. And I think in terms of that showed as well. And I think in terms of for Emery, the reaction at the end of the game was, I would suspect, partly in the knowledge of, as you mentioned, that's just one game. Obviously it's a great start and a great result, and he'll get the pats on the back. But if that's the only win that we have in the next 10, then people aren't going to be looking back and going, yeah, that's a great one win. We won't worry about the other 9. It's onwards and upwards in terms of the next games, and onwards and upwards in terms of looking at the league table. In terms of only 3 points off the relegation zone, so there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of to establish ourselves firstly in the relative safety of mid-table, and then we will see whether it's this year or next as to going towards Europe, as Emery has said is his first aim. And another aim that Emery has said is to win a trophy. And he gets the opportunity on Thursday night to take his first step towards winning his first trophy, where we go and see some old friends from Sunday at Old Trafford for the third round League Cup tie against Manchester United. I think we mentioned in terms of team lineups, there were a few changes to the United team. We played in the league game on Sunday. For balance, I understand there were 3 changes from Man United's previous league game against West Ham, one of which would Fernandes suspended. I think in terms of the 3, I was surprised by the 3. But we will see on Thursday night, both for Villa and Man United, how many team changes there are from the league game. From a Villa perspective, do you see wholesale changes, or do you think we'll try and build on the momentum from Sunday and go again with largely the same team?
I think if he wants to get the fans on side, then obviously he wants to get through this next round of the cup. And I imagine that being a natural born winner like Unai Emery is, that he will want to go to Old Trafford, win, make another statement, regardless of the team that United put out, and get us into the hat for the next round. I wouldn't be surprised to see 1 or 2 changes, especially with Brighton coming up. But then again, at the same time, with there being a month's period of no games, or even longer, really, it's about 6 weeks, isn't it? I wouldn't be surprised if he did just carry on playing the same players. Now that he's got a tune out of them, though, he's the type of manager, it appears, that adapts to every situation, doesn't he? And Brighton are going to be a lot different to how Man United play. So he'll put the players in that he needs to. And it's remembering that, unlike Sunday, this game's away. It's at Old Trafford. It's a place where, teams have gone to die previously. Not so much the case anymore. No. But he might just go that little bit more defensive and try and spring a shock and a counter on them, and we get the win that way. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of changes, whether it's too early for the likes of Kamara and Sanson to be considered for larger parts of the game than just 20 or 30 minutes, will remain to be seen. But we could see the likes of, John McGinn returning to the lineup, Danny Ings maybe getting a chance in there, Callum Chambers, Ashley Young, it may be, I'd say, would he rest the World Cup hopefuls? I mean, he doesn't have to worry about Douglas Luiz. Gerrard did him dirty enough to not get selected for the Brazil squad. Coutinho's obviously out injured for quite a while, which is a shame. But you sort of think, will he rest Martinez? Will he rest Cash? Would he rest Bednarek, or would he give him a chance to get some minutes in his legs? Kamara, the same. He's going to be hoping to get into the France World Cup squad still. So it'll be an interesting 11, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned a few players there. We got the scope to bring them in. I do think the World Cup prospects is going to play a part in terms of the players who you think are unlikely to be in the squads for their respective nations. You'd expect are more likely to play than not. Kamara's an interesting one in terms of, it's a type of game, leaving aside if it wasn't a World Cup or fitness, it was just, when he's 100% fit, is that type of game you'd want him to play? And the answer would be yes. In terms of, because it's a World Cup, he's coming back from injury. If he's fit enough to get 60 minutes, is it going to be a scenario where he's knocking on the manager's door saying, I need to prove my fitness here. I'd like a run out, an hour. Hopefully we'll be fit enough to play on Sunday as well for another hour. Or is he left, kind of in reserve to come on for half an hour? It'd be interesting to see. I mean, I'd think in terms of, unfortunately, you kind of mentioned Dougie Luiz and some of the international players who aren't in their respective squads. I think the majority of the players who aren't going to be called up are going to be English, famous. In terms of the starting lineup from Sunday's game, unfortunately, when we have our World Cup preview episode, we can go into a bit more detail in terms of the rights and wrongs. But in terms of, I don't see Mings being in the England squad. I don't see Ramsey. I don't see Watkins. Don't see Ashley Young being called up. So I'd keep them rolling in terms of those players largely for Thursday night, get a bit of confidence up. ahead of a month of training during the World Cup. I think they're going on some warm weather training in December as well, near the back end of the World Cup. So yeah, I would expect to see 5 or 6 changes, maybe 5, but still a decent team you'd expect to put out, and we'll see what United are going to do. I mean, in terms of beat their near first choice 11, not entirely first choice, but we beat them fairly comfortably. We'll see what our reserves can do against their reserves, though. There would be something quite nice in a way. Well, for the first 5 minutes of the game, if we turned up with our reserves and United went full strength, first choice 11, and after the game say, yeah, we needed to get the confidence back. We needed to get it, that we had that much of a psychological effect on them. But yeah, I anticipate there'll be changes. But in terms of an outcome, you obviously, as we said, you got the league game right in terms of a Villa win. Is history going to repeat itself in a week? Are Villa going to get a win or go through to the next round at Old Trafford? Or will the changes that we anticipate may happen result in the home team being victorious?
I think we beat him again, though I don't think it's after 90 minutes. I think we beat him on penalties this time. I don't know what the score will be. I'm toying between 1-1 or 2-2. A lot of it depends on who's in goal, really. I'm going to go for a 2-2. I think if they put Martial in the team, he'll cause more problems for us than Ronaldo did at the weekend. It'll be interesting to see who we start with, as we just mentioned, because even players like Leander Dendoncker are going to be hoping to get into the World Cup squad for their nation. You've got people like Nakamba who didn't even make the bench the other night. Does he come in? Does Cameron Archer get a run out against Harry Maguire? It'll be an interesting one. I'm going to go 2-2, and we're going to win on penalties, and it'll be Ashley Young who scores the winning penalty for us, and then flicks the V to all the United fans as he runs over to the Claret and Blue Army in the corner.
The ultimate heel turn.
Yeah.
Only better if he scored the penalty with his heel. I mean, that would be the ultimate disrespect in terms of a back-heeled penalty. We probably won't see that. In terms of my prediction, I agree with you in terms of I think it's going to be a draw. And I'm not going to predict who's going to win on penalties because, as you said, it's going to be affected so much by who's in goal, who's still on the field, kind of who's playing. But yeah, I'm positive in terms of I think we're going to give them a game, regardless of what team we put out, regardless of what team they put out. I think momentum would be on our side a little. I mean, in terms of the changes to the team might make comparison to Sunday kind of a little less relevant, but yeah, I think we'll do right. I mean, in terms of did we play them in the FA Cup last year, and we were unlucky there. So yeah, why not? As you said, Old Trafford is not the place it used to be. I mean, even we won last year in the league. So Thursday night, always a weird. I mean, United have also been playing in Europe on a Thursday night, but for a League Cup game, Thursday's a little of a strange time for a game. Could have an impact. It makes a little bit of difference, I think, in terms of atmosphere. Although the waspish amongst you would say United Old Trafford doesn't have an atmosphere anyway. But yeah, let's take a draw. Let's take a draw. But take the chance on the penalty shootout. But in terms of somewhere where we'll say how it always has an excellent atmosphere, and that is not because we are biased, because we have friends of the show who are fans of who we are playing in the league on Sunday at 2:00 when we go back to league business. We are going to Brighton and Hove Albion. We are on Sky, I believe, on this Sunday 2 p.m. occasion. But commenting briefly on our hosts, who by all accounts are excellent hosts in terms of they always put some nice beers and pies on in the away end, nice stadium, nice day out. Okay, I think we said enough nice things about Brighton, potentially. But in terms of Brighton, they have a a new manager. It's the era after Potter. Safe to say recent results were mixed, but they appear to have got themselves a little bit of momentum with their last two results, a 4-1 win at home to Chelsea. And then they went to Molineux last Saturday and won 3-2. Wolves had a man sent off in the first half. What are your thoughts on Brighton?
Yeah, Brighton, like I said the other day, we're predicting the Man United score. Brighton are on a good run of form at the moment, so that's not going to do them any good. Brighton at the moment, you know, they obviously started off slowly under the zebra, and they got defeated by Brentford. I particularly watched that one with the Ivan Toney goals. They had a remarkable result against Chelsea, and you always knew they were going to beat Chelsea, and that was when the zebra was going to get his first win for them as manager. But the way they played against Wolves was rather good in an attacking sense at the weekend. And the one player who really impressed me, and I actually found quite funny afterwards in his post match interview, Adam Lallana, rolling back the years with the cross for the goal, for his own goal as well. The way that they played in and around the Wolves box with 1 to 2 touches was fantastic, especially when there was when you look at the comments from the experts in regards to Chelsea Arsenal, and I appreciate that you're a fan of both of those teams.
Gotta spread the bets.
But when you see, there was one bit where they said Havertz took 6 touches on the edge of the box when it was 3v3, and by the time he'd released the ball, it was 8 back in Arsenal's favour. Brighton were 2 to 3 touches in and around the box, especially for Lallana's first goal, and it just goes to show that they're adapting quite well now to the Zebra's new way of thinking, his new philosophies. They're not too far away from Potter's philosophies either. And when you see the players that they've got that are going to be going to the World Cup or are allegedly in preliminary squads for the World Cup as well, it's testament to how well they're doing. And they're a dangerous side for anybody to face, regardless of who you are in the league. Brighton are the sort of team who could beat anybody on their day. And they should be aiming for mid-table to knocking on the door for those European spaces, really. You know, Sanchez has had a fine couple of seasons for him, managed to get his way into the Spain squad ahead of someone like a De Gea, who's, apart from at the weekend, has been playing very well recently. Lewis Dunk in the preliminary squad, apparently. Solly March, there's calls for him to go as a left back. You've got Lallana playing very well. The left winger, can't remember what his name is, going with Japan. Didn't particularly like how he was asking for Semedo to be sent off so ferociously by doing this. Yeah. If I was referee, I'd have booked him as well. Danny Welbeck, you know, Adam Lallana said that you'd have to pay 80 or 90 million to buy an English striker that's better than Danny Welbeck in this day and age. I'm not sure I believe that, but he will score against us.
Is that how much you reckon Danny Ings is worth? He's saying 80 to 90 million.
No, you bastard.
I'm going to say no. Mitoma was their Japanese player, and also Trossard is in an excellent run of form as well.
Yeah, they're playing very well. They've got Casiado, the Ecuadorian, also who's playing very well from the moment. But Brighton, you know, you thought that when they lost Potter that things might start to go a little bit bad for them if they didn't bring in a manager of the same ilk. They sort of have, and they're picking up results again now. So they're going to be a tougher opponent than United were at the weekend and will be on Thursday.
I mean, in terms of, I was surprised when I looked at this, but maybe demonstrating where my attentions in the league table have been focused for the majority of this season. But Brighton are 6th in terms of the league table. That is higher than what I would have placed them. But I suppose those last 2 wins have really elevated them up the table. But what I'd say about Brighton, you mentioned they're a good team, and I think the emphasis is on team, because they've had players leave over the last couple of years for big money, but players who they'd already brought to kind of develop and settle in just stepped up next one off the cab rank, as it were, and just slotted straight into the team. And, they have that system that works for them. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the second half of last season, they dropped off a bit after a good start. From Brighton perspective, it'll be interesting to see whether the same thing happens again or whether they're able to continue the momentum after the World Cup that they've largely built up beforehand. But speaking of momentum, they will be running into the momentum machine that will be Villa. As you predicted, 2 wins in a row in a week against Man United. In terms of the team on Sunday, we are recording this in advance, as you may have guessed, because we did a Man United preview. We're recording this in advance of the Man United game and also the Brighton game. So any last minute injuries, we will not know about when we do this. But in terms of the team shape for Villa on Sunday, do you see the same as what we put out against United, or with Emery's tactical mind, is it at this stage just beyond our mere mortal comprehension as regards what system or shape he's going to put out?
The latter. Yeah, you confused me with that then. But yeah, I think he'll adapt it as much as he needs to. I think there'll be a bit of a defensive side to it to sort of calm Brighton down for the first 20 minutes, but he'll have the flexibility with players on the pitch to be able to adapt and to go more attacking. We may see Ramsey and Bailey out wide a little bit more with, Buendia and Bailey out wide a bit more with a Ramsey, Dendoncker, central midfield, and Douglas Luiz just behind. So it's a bit more of a 4-1-4-1. But then when we need to attack after we've quelled the atmosphere that the Amex will provide, that we see it turn into a 4-3-3 or a different formation to suit. You've got to. It's remembering that Brighton are playing different formations now as well because of having the Zebra as their new manager, and we've got to try and combat that, haven't we? Really, and see how they line up. But there's so much tactical flexibility from Emery and from the players that I've got no worries in regards to the team that he puts out and the formation he decides to start with.
No, have no worries about that. But do you have any worries about the outcome, about the result? Is this going to be another victory for Emery in the Premier League, or is it going to be a little more tricky this time round? What are your thoughts about how the game's going to pan out in terms of the result?
I think the Zebra is going to see his Seagulls get mauled by the mighty Lions of Emery. I think we're going to do quite well against them, and I don't mean to be seen to be taking the piss or anything, but I think we're gonna round it off quite well. Everybody's still looking to impress Emery at the moment. I'd like to see it as 2 league wins on the bounce. So yeah, I'm going to go that we can take the 3 points home with us from the south coast.
There we go. Have you got a score prediction?
Oh, I do. Yeah. I'm going to go, and right, this is me getting a bit carried away with it now. I'm going to go 4-1. Wow. I think we're going to see Sanchez is a great goalkeeper. Dunk is a fantastic defender. They've got some very good players. Estupinian, absolute rapid left back from Villarreal, who Emery will hopefully know all about because he's now at the real Villa. But I think we'll do enough. I think there's still that much of it. There's going to be a burning desire and passion to show Emery that we are a team who can move up the league. And what better way to do it than getting a statement win against one of the high flyers in the league this season?
Yeah, and what a way that would be to leave things going into the World Cup. In terms of my prediction, I think we're going to get a result. I'm not quite as optimistic as you. I mean, I am contractually obliged not to be as optimistic as you in terms of to keep the monikers going. Although, rather, if I was being flippant, I would say, well, Gerrard managed to win at Brighton, so 4-1 probably isn't out of the realms of possibility for Unai Emery. I'm going to go 2-2. I think in terms of Brighton, as we touched upon, I think they're in a good run of form. In terms of, you go through their starting 11, is actually really good in terms of their players, and that's a testament to them. Ours is good as well. Obviously, not saying that ours isn't, but I think in terms of, they're going to give us a game. I think it's going to be a good game. As I said, I think we will have momentum in our favour, regardless of what happens on Thursday night in the League Cup. We look like a team who, as we mentioned in terms of the United game, can be ruthless, can be clinical in terms of taking our chances. I mean, yeah, you look at we didn't mention it in terms of the United game, but if you look at the stats, it wasn't as though we had like 20 shots and 10 on target. It was a high percentage kind of shots to goal ratio, efficient football, which is what we were looking for. So, and especially, like you mentioned, Ramsey's goal against United, he had all day to put that in the top corner, which was a testament to the build-up play and the tactics that went into that. So I think we'll score. I think we'll get, some good attacking positions that we will exploit defensively. Yeah, I think Brighton have got some players who will cause us trouble. But yeah, I think we'll get a point. And I think, in terms of where Brighton are on the table and how they've started the season, I think that is, for negative Baz standards, I think that's a positive outcome to take us into the World Cup. So the unbeaten streak in the league will last over a month, in terms of if either of us are right, before matters reconvene in the league on Boxing Day. But you don't have to wait till Boxing Day to hear next from us. You can go on our Twitter page right now at Talk Trinity, whereby you can keep up to date with all the Villa news. You can find out what happened on Thursday night, and you can see in terms of whether our predictions are right. If you're listening to this or watching this in the advance of the Brighton game, if you've saved it for the weekend after a long week at work, you just thought, yep, that's what I want on my Friday night, to listen to the Brighton preview, see if you're right. Or if you couldn't wait and you're listening to it on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday before the United game, you can get on our Twitter page to congratulate Will on predicting another win, or to give your views, opinions on what's going on in the build up to the game. We'll probably have a poll or two, no doubt. Mentioned in terms of catching up with our episodes, past and present, you can go on our YouTube channel, Talking to Trinity, to catch up with those. You can, even if you want to trip down memory lane, go back to the ones where we had some guests on the show, in terms of see their thoughts. We're going to be having, as Will mentioned, we're still going to be going during the World Cup. We'll give you a bit more detail on that in our next episode, but we will not be going away during those 4 weeks. Sadly, we won't be going to warm weather training for the squad, but we will be keeping you with your Villa content. Audio wise, you can go to our audio providers, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google, to have our delightful tones in your ears, keeping those cold nights just a little warm in your heart listening to us. But before I pass you over to Mr. Trinity for his final thoughts, thank you very much for listening, watching, interacting, liking, retweeting, subscribing. Really do appreciate it. It's an exciting time to be a Villa fan, which is strange coming from me. But yeah, it's going to be good. And there's a lot of good things going on in terms of Villa and also the show. So thanks very much for listening, watching, much appreciated. And we'll be back with you again soon.
Yeah, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much, as always. There is a few days now before we next need to do another podcast. So in the words of Baz, why not have a listen to the back catalogue? Yep. And this Sunday, whatever you do, don't take his advice. Don't have a bath with the lights off. Don't have a bath in the dark anyway. It's not a very wise thing to do, because the mighty Villa boys, Emery's real Villa, are going down to the seaside where they do like to be. And I tell you, it's going to be the Villa who are always looking on the Brighton side of life as they get a massive 4-1 victory. And you can bookmark that, you can clip it, as the kids say, but please don't put a bet on just in case I am wrong. But until next time, He's Villa till he dies. I'm Villa till I die. I was right. You know, if you know, you know, and you know because I was right. Cheers, Ty. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.